Hello, this is Jamie Peltier, Planning Supervisor with the Planning Division in the Community Development Department. The item being presented to the committee is a citywide private parking code authorizing private property owners to manage their own parking facilities and enforce their own established parking regulations for private property. The history of the private parking ordinances for municipalities originated in 2015 when off-street private parking facilities lobbied the state of California to allow private regulation. The result was AB 451 was passed and amended California Vehicle Code Section 21107.8 that regulates privately owned and maintained off-street parking facilities generally open to the public. Amending the California Vehicle Code section allows the private property owners the ability to issue tickets for unauthorized vehicle parking upon a city or county passing an ordinance first. An off-street parking facility would have the ability to then authorize a private parking operator to regulate their parking facility and then essentially issue tickets for the vehicles that are not parked with authorization or within the regulations set by the parking facility. Essentially, this means that there is a separate parking enforcer not associated with the city to regulate the parking facility. The law requires several items such as signage, creating a dispute process, and creating language that would be on the notice of parking charge, the ticket, and specifically in the law, there is language that states that the parking operator is not permitted to file or transmit to the Department of Motor Vehicles an invoice in an attempt to collect the fees from the ticket. The state law provides a general framework, and the city can then supplement with any additional standards as they see fit for their community. There are several benefits to adopting this ordinance, including higher turnover of parking spaces, which increases the supply, and in turn improving the customer satisfaction with the shopping center and the shopping center experience. The proposed ordinance is to provide alternative options for parking operators as well, the ability to enforce their parking regulations, because currently the only option to handle unauthorized parking is to tow the vehicle. With this ordinance, there would be an additional option for private parking owners and operators to then issue tickets to encourage following the hours or limitations for that parking facility. The proposed ordinance would amend Chapter 8, the Vehicles and Traffic chapter, under Article 4 for parking, and creating a new division for the private parking ordinance. The ordinance will live in Chapter 8 outside of the zoning code, but will be monitored and enforced by the Community Development Department Planning Division. Within the ordinance provides a framework for private property owners for shopping retail centers containing more than 200 parking spaces to enforce private parking regulations as established by that private shopping center. An example of a regulation would be issuing a ticket for vehicles that are parked at parking meters beyond the time, and when the time has lapsed, that they would be able to issue a parking ticket for that vehicle. The various shopping centers throughout the city can choose to utilize this ordinance and then elect to submit a registration with the city. Some of the shopping centers that may elect to register are the Collection, Shopping at the Rose, the Esplanade, among others, with 200 or more parking spaces. As a result of this ordinance, the shopping centers would not alter the number of parking spaces as required by their entitlement or per the zoning code. In order for a private property owner to operate and start using the ordinance, they must submit an application to register their private parking facility with the city. The registration includes contact information for the parking operator and the property owner, the dispute resolution process, and a parking plan. The parking plan reflects the site and the areas where enforcement will occur. Signage is required per state law to be a minimum of 11 by 22 inch signs at each entry of the parking facility, indicating the regulations. The parking plan would show that specific language on the signs and where they would be located. Additionally, on the site plan would highlight other items like the hours for the hourly parking for that facility, any metered areas, how many parking spaces are going to have enforcement, and again, where the signs would be posted. Once all the documents have been reviewed by the Community Development Department, the parking operator can obtain a business tax certificate, then begin operations. Once the city has issued a registration, the parking operator can begin enforcing unauthorized parking by issuing of notice parking charges, i.e. tickets, based on the parking plan provided to the city. The notices will reflect a fee known as a mail-in parking charge. In the ordinance, the parking charges are limited to no more than the amount for stopping in a red zone, which for the city of Oxnard is $65. The amount is determined by the parking operator for what would actually be charged for the ticket. The parking charge would reflect on the notice in writing that specifically says not issued by the city of Oxnard, so the customer knows that this is directly from the shopping center and not with the city, with no association with the city. On the notice of parking charge, i.e. the ticket, the customer would have the parking operator contact information to call should there be any questions or a dispute. As a requirement of allowing private property owners to regulate parking on their property, a dispute policy would be submitted with the registration outlining the process. A customer who received a parking charge has the ability to contact the parking operator, who then has the ability to dismiss or maintain the charge after reviewing the claim by the customer. If the customer is dissatisfied with that review, they can request an administrative hearing by a third party for further review by an examiner. The examiner would be hired by a third party provider that employs certified parking examiners that are trained in parking enforcement and parking citations. After the administrative hearing, the dispute remedies are exhausted and the decision on the parking charge is final. All of this is done outside of the city enforcement, and there would be no city personnel associated with this process. The ordinance applies to those qualified shopping centers that elect to register and maintain their registration would mean staying in compliance with the chapter. Should there be any complaints, warnings can be issued that may lead to revocation by the Community Development Department if no remedies are taken to come back into compliance with their registration and the ordinance. With that, the recommendation is that the Community Services, Public Safety, Housing and Development Committee recommend the City Council adopt a private parking ordinance that would add Division 3 to Article 4, Chapter 8 of the Oxnard City Code. Thank you.